Further, in a series of news headlines from CNN and BBC, and I'm pretty sure even from other news networks, probably even like Fox, it is very clear, there's a very clear demarcation in whose lives matter more than someone else's. And in all of these headlines, we find that there is a bias where the people who are committing these atrocities, most notably Israel, is strategically removed, or they are treated passively as if they're not committing these atrocities that resulted in the unaliving of these Palestinian and Lebanese people. BBC fails to use its active voice. BBC repeatedly fails to name who the perpetrators are. Palestinians are reported to be dying passively. For instance, we see girl killed inside home as Israeli West Bank operations continues. Killed by who? The actor of those who are unaliving Palestinians is never or rarely ever named in the headline. Next one. Hind Rajab, 6th, found dead in Gaza days after phone calls for help. She is found dead. It's not that she has been killed, but found dead, as if she just miraculously died. When anybody who knows the story knows that she was brutally unalived. She was brutally murked, pow-powed. Next, when they came for Lebanon, it was the exact same thing. The bombs were flying... The bombs were everywhere. The people fleeing Lebanon airstrikes. Who? Who made these bombs fly everywhere? Who rained bombs on Lebanon? The actors of these atrocities, or of all these atrocities, are never ever named. Conversely, when it is October 7th, it is the Islamists, it is the jihadists, it is Hamas, it is this and that. You see, the actors are named. Like, we even see the stark difference when we look at, for instance, this article, how Hamas built a force to attack Israel on October 7th, right? Another BBC article. You see over here, the victims in this article are the Israelis. BBC puts the perpetrators of this attack as being Hamas, and we see that the active voice is being used when it was Hamas or whatever Palestinian resistance. That's what happened on October 7th. We see that the active voice is being used here. But when the victims are Palestinians, when the victims are Lebanese, when the victims are the Iranians, we see that the active voice of the perpetrators, which were like the Israelis, were never, ever, ever, ever used. Yeah? But when it's the other way around, when the table flips, when the table turns, turning tables, Adele, and it's Israelis who are the victims, yeah? We see the active voice used all the time against whether it be the Lebanese resistance or the Palestinian resistance or what have you. In portraying the Israeli attacks, Israel is portrayed as being a lone wolf in a sea of Islamists that's unable to even defend itself and needs the United States, Papa Doc United States to defend Israel from being in a hotbed sea of Islamist terrorists. Take the following from Fox News, for instance. In using such language such as Islamist or the term jihadist as some other media outlets prefer using, the headline ties the religion of Islam as being part of the guilt trip, along with his followers as being collectively responsible and as being collectively guilty for the actions of the Iranian government. Further, in using the term Islamist, the name of the religion of Islam has been taken and its name has been manipulated to create a pejorative construct that ties Islam directly with terrorism and with violence, which further perpetuates Islamophobia, the fear and hatred of Muslims, and it also helps to peddle this Islamophobic propaganda of Islam being a violent religion. One must think, why is that we do this particularly with Islam? Why is that we particularly do this with Muslims, where we manipulate and take such a beautiful religion such as Islam and take its name and create a disgusting construct to tie it with fanaticism, to tie it with violence, but we do not do it with any other faith group. We have seen Netanyahu, for instance, take the Bible, weaponize the Bible and the narrative of Amalek, and go so far as to justify the Gen Zero side on the Palestinians through the narrative and the story of Amalek? Is this not the epitome of religious fanaticism that we have condemned people like Al-Qaeda for, that we have condemned people like Boko Haram for, that we have condemned people like ISIS for, and the Taliban for? But when it's Israel that does the exact same thing using Amalek, for some reason, we never call it religious fanaticism, nor do we ever call it terrorism. Terrorism and religious fanaticism are only reserved for those who are perceived as Muslim or Muslim adjacent. And in this inequality, we see this heavily being played in the media's adultification of Palestinian children, which is very similar, draws great parallels to how the United States media, the American media, and just like Western media as a whole, has an adultification on Black American children, Black children, even if you're in Canada, Indigenous children are adultified. Great example is that in the UK media, there was a reporting of a 3-year-old Palestinian girl who was brutally unalived. And the UK media, the reporters called her a young lady.
Manning that checkpoint. The video we're going to freeze shortly, but the two people, a man and a woman in the car, in the subsequent day, they were killed by the police, but it looks like accidentally a stray bullet found its way into the van ahead, and that killed a 3 or 4-year-old young lady. So tragic events in the West Bank.
And you may be wondering, what does adultification really have to do? How important is adultification? Well, when we adultify a child, this removes their innocence, for one. As a society, we tend to place great amounts of mercy and empathy on those who are children, as they are defenseless, they are helpless, they cannot help themselves. And we don't tend to put the same amount of mercy and compassion for adults, as adults are presumed not to necessarily be innocent, and adults are also presumed to be self-reliant and not exactly helpless as a child is. So by adultifying this 3-year-old Palestinian girl, what the UK media has essentially done is that it has removed the innocence of this child, and it has contributed to this child's dehumanization, almost making it somewhat okay, or if not at least okay, it's not as grievous, the fact that the IDF unalived her. In contrast, we see that there is almost a playing of society's dynamics when it comes to gender dynamics, and even dynamics when it comes to adultification and child innocence when Israeli lives are on the line. Great example is when a number of female Israeli IDF reservists and IDF officers were held as hostages by El-Qassam. These women were reported as being and marketed to the public as being teenage girls, a girl's girl, your girl next door, all of that. Everything but the fact that these are and were war criminals. They partake actively in colonizing Palestinians. They partake actively in the apartheid in Palestine. That these female IDF officers partake in oppressing Palestinians, and what the pro-Zionist media has done in, you can say, trying to humanize war criminals, is that they have weaponized society's gender biases regarding men and women, specifically the gender bias of women being less likely to commit a crime, stuff like that, or the gender bias of a woman can't do that, it's a woman, she can't cause this amount of harm. This type of gender bias, they have weaponized it in favor of humanizing female IDF officers so that they can get you to support the Zionist cause and to remove yourself from humanizing the victims of the genocide. Take this propaganda piece, for instance, from Montana Tucker.
Are you aware of what happened on October 7th?
I know.
So we decided to go out in public and raise awareness for what happened to a 19-year-old innocent girl, Nama Levy. This not only stands for Nama, but for all the innocent hostages that are still in captivity.
What's this all about?
Are you familiar with what happened on October 7th?
Last year? Yeah. Not aware.
So on October 7th, terrorists went into Israel, murdered and kidnapped people at a music festival in their homes. And one of the girls that they kidnapped, Nama Levy, an innocent girl that did nothing wrong. And these pants are to replicate what she looked like after they kidnapped her. That's what they released of her. That's her. So this is what they...
يا كلاب والله لا ندعس عليكم يا
That kind of stuff to me is just very disgusting.
It's so heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking.
It's happening now in the world.
Like, they don't show the stuff on the news.
So you created this thing?
These pants are an art installation by Tomer.
Everything I've been doing is dedicated to those young girls. It's another piece of art just for awareness, to educate people about that.
I appreciate you wanting to learn.
Thank you for taking the time out of your life to do this.
We didn't know.
Yeah, we didn't know. Now we know.
Thank you.
It's a good cause that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for your time.
I appreciate it.
And it means a lot to me that you're standing out here to bring the light.
Really a tough job you're doing. It just touches the heart.
We all have sisters, kids, cousins, aunts, moms. We just want to make sure people don't forget them.
Notice how in the propaganda piece it is left out that Nama Levy is an Israeli soldier, specifically a surveillance soldier. Her involvement in colonizing Palestine via her role in the IDF is strategically left out. She is portrayed as an innocent girl with no military ties or involvement in oppressing Palestinians who was just kidnapped by these Arab terrorists. With all of the Israeli girls held hostage, their military ties and involvement in the IDF and in oppressing Palestinians is virtually nowhere to be found in these sensationalized propagandized pieces. Rather, it is everything that makes them relatable to you, the audience, that is accentuated. Their goals, their dreams, their youth and their family, their love of life, aka all their relatable characteristics and traits are highlighted in propagandizing Israeli female hostages to the Western audience. And this is strategically done so that you as the audience can see yourself in them and that you don't see them as being soldiers who are guilty of oppressing these Palestinian people. Take this picture and read the captions underneath every single one of the pictures of these female hostages. She wanted to travel the world before being taken on October 7th. The violinist is shown bloodied in the video. The violinist. Look at this. The violinist. Not the soldier, not the reservist, but the violinist. Again, their military involvement is strategically left out. The other one, I'll say, is the exact same thing. The musician hopes to be a singer. Yeah? This is basically humanizing these soldiers who have partaken in colonizing and oppressing Palestinians. Basically portraying these as innocent girl next door. Yeah? It's just strategically left out that these people are mercenaries. It is strategically left out that these women were mercenaries. Take this other tweet, yeah? When you're mean to Israel, this is who you're being mean to. And then it shows a picture of some IDF girl, pouty face, whatever. Female sexuality is heavily used in propaganda for the IDF to make it tasteful for a Western audience where young women in golden hour, captured at camera angles, getting their best shots, and edited pictures are used to be the face of Israel and the IDF. Often, human beings tend to attach goodness to what they see as attractive, which is a bias, a psychological bias known as the attractiveness bias. So by using an attractive set of women to mark the IDF, the audience is less likely to view them as bad. They are less likely to be critical of their motives and actions because of their attractiveness and sexuality factor, weaponizing the human bias to look favorably to attractive stimuli, also known as the beautiful is good stereotype or the halo effect, where you see something or someone as attractive and you want to look at them in a favorable light, look at them as the best of the best, then you attach these good moral characteristics on that thing you view as being attractive. We see an inherent inequality between how Israeli lives are treated versus how those who are Palestinian and whose Palestinian adjacent lives are treated, where the Israeli life, even if it's just one Israeli life, is treated as being worth infinitely more than every Palestinian life on this planet. Not only every single Palestinian life on this planet, but virtually every Muslim life on this planet, every Arab person's life on this planet, and anybody who's adjacent to these groups. We see even this is shown and exemplified in CNN's Sympathy piece for the IDF officer trying to get you as the reader, you as the listener, to sympathize with a war criminal, to sympathize with somebody who has unalived children bulldozed over Gaza, someone who has committed to detonating buildings because they have PTSD. So their trauma is seen as being worth infinitely more than the traumas of the Palestinians on the ground. Their traumas are specifically the people who are IDF officers, the actual war criminals, the colonizers. Traumas are seen as being infinitely worth more than anything a Palestinian person can go through. And this in of itself is what underscores racism. Not only the inequality of life, but it is the politics of life and death, who gets to live and who gets to die.